Hello everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I'd like to dive into the lore and history of the Ascians, the primary antagonists in Final Fantasy XIV. This video will contain several story spoilers about the events of the game, and as such, should be watched with care. So right off the bat, I call the Ascians the primary antagonist of the game, which is a bold statement considering the number of terrible things that have taken place. Bahamut being released, the Garleans threatening to take over, the Primals being summoned by the Beast Tribes, the war with the dragons in Ishgard. The conflicts just keep piling up. However, the Ascians are the driving force behind these conflicts as they attempt to cause a disaster so devastating that it prompts an event known as the Rejoining, which would summon forth their one true god, Zodiark. These events are known by the inhabitants of Eorzea as the start of an Umbral era, though they don't know about this whole Rejoining thing as being the actual cause of the Umbral eras. So, a bunch of bad guys want to resurrect their one true god, because that story's never been done before, right? But how does it actually tie into the history of Eorzea and to the other Final Fantasy games that they draw inspirations from? Well, let's look at the history regarding the Ascians in both Final Fantasy XIV and the rest of the Final Fantasy series. Primarily going to be looking at the Ivalice Alliance, since they no doubt take their inspirations from those games. So the Ascians of Final Fantasy XIV, let's look at them first. They have been around for a very long time. In fact, it's likely that they have been around since the time of the 12, when Eorzea was inhabited by gods and goddesses. The namesake obviously leads us to believe that it was the 12 themselves who walked the earth at that time. Now we know the Ascians have been around since then due to a comment made in patch 2.3, where it is said that the people of Eorzea have survived the Rejoining 7 times. Now, considering that there are 7 Umbral eras, and the game currently takes place in the 7th Astral era, it is implied that the Ascians were responsible for all of the Umbral eras, including the first ever one, which was caused when several wandering tribes of mortals found Eorzea and began to war with each other, causing the 12 to leave Eorzea behind. Now, let's back up a second. So they have been trying to resurrect Zodiark since the time of the 12, and use the people of Eorzea as a means to attempt the first rejoining and, well, every rejoining after. But that of course means that Zodiark was in existence since the time of the 12 as some sort of god or deity. But outside of a few speculations, nothing is set in stone. Perhaps he's the dark equivalent of Hydaelyn. Perhaps he was some magical being of great strength that Hydaelyn and the 12 saw as a threat. But my theory is that he was once the 13th god to walk Eorzea. However, due to his immense power and dark desires compared to the 12, they combined their powers and sealed him away to protect the land from his wrath. But that then begs the question of who the Ascians actually are. Were they created by Zodiark to carry out the goal of his resurrection, or were they magical beings in existence during the time of the 12 that formed a cult worshipping Zodiark and thus, before he was sealed away, granted them immortality so that they may one day bring him back? There's basically a ton of blanks that still need filling in regarding the motives behind Zodiark's return, and the impact it would have on the realm. I mean, if Bahamut's attempted destruction of Eorzea was but a precursor to Zodiark's return, how much power would Zodiark himself have? Well, considering the roots of the Ascians and Zodiark and the rest of the Final Fantasy series, his immense power may actually be what caused him to be sealed away in the first place. You see, all of the Ascians, and Zodiark himself, draw inspiration from the Final Fantasy games taking place in Ivalice, the most prominent ones being Tactics and Final Fantasy XII. Hell, even the 12 are basically just a carbon copy of the Ikuria, the almighty deities of Ivalice who once walked the earth alongside the races of the world before retreating to their own realm. Sound familiar, doesn't it? Sounds like the time of the 12 to me. So we can theoretically learn everything about Final Fantasy XIV's Ascians and Zodiark by just connecting the dots between the two universes, Eorzea and Ivalice. So let's look at the Ascians before we talk more about Zodiark. So the Ascians draw inspiration from the Scions of Light in Ivalice. Yes, you heard correctly, the Scions of Light. These were 12 entities we know almost nothing about in the Ivalice universe, other than that they were created by the Ikuria, just like the Scions of Darkness, which are their opposites, and likely obeyed their creators to no end. Considering that all of the Ascians we have met so far have names matching those of Scions of the Light, we can assume that the remaining unnamed Ascians are all going to be named accordingly to the ones that are still left. The interesting thing is that even though they're named after the Scions of Light, they actually themselves draw inspiration from the Scions of Darkness, Scions that rebelled against the gods under another Scion by the name of Ultima, the High Seraph, and were damned to the darkest reaches of Ivalice as espers as punishment for their disobedience. Yeah, Ultima the High Seraph was their leader. Coincidence that the Ascians also tried to use Ultima weapon in A Realm Reborn's initial story arc? Probably not a coincidence. Anyway, these Scions are considered opposite sides of the same coin when it comes to the Scions of the Light. Both the Scions of Darkness and Light are affiliated with a specific element and a specific zodiac sign. When observing an Ascian that is about to do combat, you can actually see a glyph appear over their face. That's where the tie-in is. The Scion of Light has a glyph over their face that matches that of the respective Scion of Darkness. The best example is La Habrea, whose glyph matches that of Mateus the Corrupt, who, in Ivalice, is the opposite of La Habrea, Scion of Light, Scion of Darkness. So it all makes sense. So they were both created under the element of ice and the zodiac sign of Piscis the fish. So yeah, there's a lot of tie-ins with Ivalice, as you can see. But there is one name missing from that list though, Elidibus. I mean, all the other names are there. La Habrea, Ultima the High Seraph is there, but I guess we can't really take too deep of a look at that. But Elidibus, his name's not listed as either a Scion of Light or Darkness, so how does he really tie into it all? Well, his name comes from a character in Final Fantasy Tactics, another game in the Ivalice Alliance as mentioned before. He is one of the Lucavi, demons that use a Zodiac Stone to exist in the world of Ivalice. Now, this Zodiac Stone is also called Auracite. Yeah, another tie-in between the Ascians and the Scions. So, Elidibus is one of these Lucavi. He's able to use the Zodiac Stone to change between a human and a demon form, and he's a legendary wizard and is an optional boss at that. But one important thing is he holds the 13th Zodiac Stone, the Stone of Ophiuchus the Serpent, and is capable of summoning Zodiark in combat. Now, if we take a look at this list of Scions of Light and Dark, what is the 13th Zodiac sign at the bottom? It is Ophiuchus. And who is the Scion that is involved with them? Zodiark. Though it's not known if he's light or darkness or an embodiment of both, he is the 13th Zodiac sign. So there you go. Elidibus has something to do with Zodiark, a lot to do with Zodiark. He also appears to have no affiliation with the other Lucavi, and unlike the others has the same name in both human and demon form, something all the other Lucavi don't have. So with all of this information, what can we guess about Elidibus in Final Fantasy XIV? Well, it seems he has the closest ties to Zodiark and may be an actual manifestation of the one true God's own will. His title of Emissary and his more peaceful approach to dealing with the Scions shows how unlike his fellow Ascians he really is, just like how in Tactics he is a Lucavi that has very little to do with all the other Lucavi. You'd think he'd agree with La Habrea's actions of attempting to use Ultima to bring about another rejoining, but he actually disagrees with his actions, stating that the only excuse for it was that it allowed them to find someone strong enough with the Echo to banish an Ascian in the first place. So although La Habrea is considered the leader of the Ascians at the moment, don't be surprised if and when Elidibus is revealed to be the real threat behind Zodiark's revival. His namesake and his history just have way too much to do with Zodiark to think otherwise, at least in my opinion. Alright, so how does this all tie in with Zodiark? Because that was the point of explaining all that, sort of enforcing the similarities between Eorzea and Ivalice and their stories. Well, while there were 11 known Scions of Light and 11 known Scions of Darkness, there were 2 Scions whose affiliations were unknown. The first was Ultima the High Seraph, which we already said was the leader of the Scions of Darkness who rebelled against the gods. That was why they were imprisoned in the first place. And in case you're wondering why there's 11 Scions and there's 12 Ascians outside of Elidibus, there is a 12th Ascian named Ultima, although it is spelled with an A, and he's probably not too important, or at least we're assuming that as of right now, but that's probably just for the sake of covering all the Zodiac signs in the Ivalice universe in Eorzea. The 13th we've already discussed was Zodiark, the Keeper of Precepts, who is also under the sign of Ophiuchus. So, Zodiark never rebelled against the gods, so how did he get imprisoned in the first place? Well, just turns out he was so powerful that they trapped him in a childlike state so that he would never grow up and realize his full power. And eventually, they granted Zodiark the same punishment as the Scions of Darkness who rebelled against them, by sending him to Ivalice and putting him away in the darkest corners so that it would just be his punishment. His ultimate attack, Final Eclipse, actually showcases what his full power may have been like. It shows him achieving his adult form, which is strangely just his child body with giant wings, but it's strong enough to destroy the fabric of reality itself. So if Final Fantasy XIV Zodiark is this powerful as well, you might be able to see why the 12 may have wanted to seal him away. So we've talked about why Zodiark was potentially sealed away. We've talked about how old Zodiark and the Ascians are, that Zodiark himself may have once been a member of the 12, although he would have been the 13th, which follows his own theme in Ivalice. We've talked about the similarities between the Ascians and the Scions of Light and Darkness, and Elidibus and how he summoned Zodiark, and all of these similarities just, if you didn't know about this beforehand, blows your mind. I've had people asking me to make this video for well over a year now, but it felt real good kind of waiting until we're about to go into Heavensward, because there's a lot of things that have unfolded since I was initially asked to do this video talking about the similarities. And if you didn't know about Ivalice before now, you're probably a little bit more interested in it. And honestly, you should go find out as much as you can, because it seems that Final Fantasy XIV, while it is a melting pot of all Final Fantasy concepts and themes and recurring characters, that Ivalice is one of the strongest concepts that it pulls from. So Final Fantasy XII Tactics, whichever game it is, man, we have a lot to learn yet about all the stuff that's going on in Final Fantasy XIV. It really seems like they've weaved together something that when you think you know what's going on, you really have no idea. Hopefully, we have a better idea after trying to absorb all this knowledge regarding Final Fantasy history and the namesakes and whatnot. So let me know what you think about these theories and similarities between Ivalice and Eorzea. Let me know what you think in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I will see you guys in the next video. I don't even know how I'm supposed to follow this one up, but regardless, take care.